Hello and welcome everyone to our first Open Matters episode of 2021. I'm your host, Guy Martin, the Executive Director of OASIS Open. You know, we all know that 2021 was such a challenging year as all of us navigated the new normal of what a worldwide pandemic looks like. And, you know, one of the things that was most obvious to me during this time was how interconnected our world is, especially digitally. And more importantly, what an important role Europe plays in our technology ecosystem. You know, it became very clear that OASIS needed to take advantage of the solid reputation that we've always had in European standards. And the result of this was that we formed the OASIS Open Europe Foundation, or what we call the OOEF, which is an independent nonprofit organization based in the Netherlands that has close connections to us here at OASIS Global, but has a separate mandate to pursue independent open source and open standards initiatives for all of Europe. But rather than me boringly tell you about it, I've invited some special guests who are going to be able to give you a lot more detailed information on this effort. Laetitia Cailleteau is a Managing Director and Data AI Lead for Accenture in Europe, and is also one of this very stellar group of board directors who have agreed to join the OASIS Open Europe Foundation. She's joined today by Dr. Carol Cosgrove-Sacks, who's our Senior Advisor for International Standards Policy here at OASIS. And together, they both played critical roles in the formation of the OOEF. So Laetitia and Carol, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Guy.
Thank you, Guy, for having us.
Yes, it's nice. Thank you for arranging this.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to get started, but before we do, a couple of quick housekeeping items for our audience. Remember, please hold your questions till the end, and attendees may raise their hands to ask their question live, or you can insert a question into the QA box. And just a quick reminder for everybody that this session is being recorded for later playback. So with that, let's get started. So Carol, I'd like to start with you. Can you give a bit more background on the process that OASIS has gone through over the years, even before I took over as the executive director, to get to the point of launching this new entity?
Yeah, with pleasure. I would say that for more than 20 years, OASIS Open has made a very strong contribution to European standardization. And European private sector, enterprises and the public sector have been very active members of OASIS and have participated in many of OASIS standards development activities. Just to give a couple of examples, UBL, Universal Business Language, is the most widely used standard in Europe for e-invoicing and public procurement. And that is a predominantly made in Europe standard with OASIS. And AS4, which is the basis for the European Commission's e-delivery building block, which is in some of the world's biggest international data exchanges. And we've contributed to the EU rolling plan for ICT standardization ever since its inception, and we play a role in the multi-stakeholder platform for ICT standardization. So we've been very active in Europe for a long time. But during the last 10 years or so, we've been invited to participate in some major EU-funded or EU-led projects where our standards expertise has been really relevant, but we've been blocked because we didn't have a European base, a European office, an EU bank account. All of these things proved to be a major difficulty. So it was in the light of that, especially as open source projects have become much more important in both OASIS and in Europe, we thought the time was right. And as you say, we set up the OASIS Open Europe Foundation as a stichting in the Netherlands. Have I got time just to mention our brilliant board?
Absolutely. Because we have one of them here with us, but yes, yeah, feel free to mention them.
Two even. In addition to Laetitia Cailleteau, who is French, and Guy himself, who's American, we have 7 directors on the board, 4 women, 3 men. I think that's a thoroughly modern, diverse board. And in addition to Laetitia and Guy, we have Martin Chapman from Ireland, Eva Kostia from Italy, Gershon Janssen from the Netherlands, Jana Lingenfelder from Germany, and Andriana Prentsa from Greece. And it's a great pleasure for me and my colleague, Pim van der Eyck, to work with this brilliant board and to assist them to define our strategy. Maybe I pass to Laetitia.
Yes, and actually that's a great segue. Thanks, Carol, because I wanted to ask, Laetitia, we're very excited, obviously, to find all of our board members, but specifically someone with your background and reputation in open source and open standards in Europe. So what made you want to come donate your time? Because we have to say to everybody that just like our board on the global side, none of you are getting paid. So what made you want to come donate your time as a board director for the OOEF?
I'm truly honored, actually, to have been, appointed at the board of OASIS from the Open Foundation in Europe. The key the key driver for me is we have started the fourth industrial revolution, and COVID has been accelerating a lot of reinvention and movement, in society, in organization, everywhere. And for me, open standard and open source are really key accelerator of the transformation. And there's a number of things that needs to be put in place. There's two ways of looking at change. Either you see it pass by, or you actually take action and be part of it. And for me, this is kind of an opportunity to kind of be an actor of change and really help that, setting up the foundation of this, next industrial revolution, if you want, and spend the time to actually have those key things in place so people can innovate. We can make decisions today, but we can be flexible and open for tomorrow. Things are changing so fast. Business models are changing very fast. What we need is changing very fast. And I think, open standard and open source are key enablers of that flexibility and openness. So that's why I'm super excited and truly honored to be there. I think there's a lot to do, and I want to be part of it.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I mean, it's basically a startup, right? We've basically done a foundation startup, if you will. So I think there's a lot of greenfield and excellent opportunities for that. So awesome. As it relates to sort of how we interface with the European Commission, for example, Carol, I'd like you to talk a little bit about this, because you've seen quite a bit in your time advising and advocating for OASIS standards with the European Commission. And what do you think the biggest impact of the OOEF is going to be, not just in terms of how we work with the European Commission, but how we work with all the government entities in Europe? Because, we have friends and colleagues and Laetitia, you live in the UK. So, UK is still part of Europe. We want to make sure that this is not just European Commission, but all of Europe.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. I think at this time, interoperability is the name of the game. And I think OASIS has a really special mission globally and in Europe to help deliver real working interoperability. And I know that all of Europe is currently considering how to reshape its standardization fit for what they see as twin transitions, for digital transformation, and for green recovery for a sustainable future post-COVID-19. And interoperability is a key issue to achieve those goals. And I think that OASIS has a mission to offer its expertise to assist in crafting solutions for real interoperability based on open standards and interoperability based on open source code. So I think as a foundation, one thing that we can most particularly do is to engage with open source program offices around Europe to help encourage interoperability solutions. I hope they would embody such characteristics that we value in OASIS as accessibility, reliability, open access, fairness. And I think we're excited by the EU's OS strategy, which encourages a much more rapid development of open, data-driven and digital transformation. And I'd like to congratulate the European Commission on its Think Open approach. Now, I believe that our foundation will have the opportunity to join collaborative projects. These projects might address challenges where OASIS has a track record, like cybersecurity, privacy, identity, open data, public procurement, blockchain, many other areas. It's feasible that these opportunities might be funded by the EU, for example, the Digital Europe programme. Maybe not. There are other ways to fund our activities, but we see opportunities regarding research and innovation where OASIS know-how could have added value, because we can genuinely offer insights and solutions. Our experience and expertise in open standards and open source, we can contribute to longer term sustainability for the outputs of EU research projects. And we're looking for partnerships, maybe joining consortia where our standards and our OS expertise could add value. So we're very open to potential partnerships.
Right. I mean, we're at an interesting point in starting this up. I know we've had a lot of folks say, well, what are you going to do? And I characterize it as a startup. Is we have some ideas, we have some thoughts, and Laetitia, I'd like you to talk about some of what you consider the most exciting areas, because I know we've had one of our first board meeting already, and it was a fantastic board meeting in that there were a lot of great ideas going around of what we could focus on. So in your perspective, and kind of from where you're coming from data and AI, what do you think are some of the technology areas that OOEF would likely focus on first?
Thank you, guys. Well, obviously, being in the field of data and AI and engineering, my whole career when I started, I can definitely see a lot of potential in those areas. Meaning, I think the revolution we had over the past decade in software engineering around, DevOps, open source, and all of that is actually making its way to data, because we standardize quite a lot on, the software engineering kind of angle, but we haven't really gone yet into the data space, and we can start seeing, how do you exchange data in a way that's that's easy, trustworthy, and all of those kind of challenge are coming right there right now. In the same way on the AI, a lot of people are talking about MLOps. A number of models were done, in a non-industrialized way, and we need to bring them to production. We need to compile them, and like that whole life cycle of bringing AI into the business processes of people. So I definitely see this as a big area where a lot of focus is needed. We also see cross-industry data set consumption or data set usage. We're working with some telco recently where some of the geographic data of the mobility of people in one country was used by a retailer to pick up the space that they wanted to rent. They wanted to rent to have a physical presence to sell their product. So there's when we're thinking about data exchange in the past, it was pretty much via API, and it was we try to decouple from that spaghetti story as much as we could, and we standardized quite a bit. But now we see data used a lot across industries as well, and all of that kind of thing, and open data. Having data set that can be consumed by people, or algorithms that can be consumed by people, and the productionization of all of that, I think is the wave coming. So this area needs a lot of focus, I think. And then there's some other area that Carol was touching upon on responsible business or fairness, or all those topics also there's a lot of things coming out on the market. Every software provider is starting to provide a little bit of an angle on it, but it's very heterogeneous, and it's very difficult for people that want to put those things in place to actually understand what to pick and how to pick it. So I think standardization there is also quite important, just to have a level set of understanding how to move forward and how to complement and what to use to really create those new models, and reinventing, our society in some way, on our businesses. This is definitely an area where there's a lot more to do in terms of standard.
Right. And it's interesting, as you're talking, I'm thinking about things we've talked about around open data, but also digital sovereignty, right? I mean, part of this is, and the reason this foundation was formed is because there are issues that are unique to Europe, right? GDPR, for example. How do you think the foundation can start to help in some of those issues of digital sovereignty to build standards and to take privacy, for example, into account as we're building these standards, things that are specific to Europe? Either one of you, sorry, I was looking at Laetitia, but either one of you may answer that question.
Let Laetitia maybe go first.
Yeah, meaning I think Europe is often leading the way in terms of the thinking, the regulation, with putting some of those frameworks in place. But ultimately is influencing quite a lot of the world. So I think, being in Europe, and having, I think, the European Commission really kind of taking a driving seat on some of those, on a number of organizations wanting to go forward. I think this could be, a place where we incept some of those, concept that could be taken more globally. There's not many companies that are just having a European footprint as well. So by definition, all of those things are interconnected, and I think can have a massive influence. I definitely think, markets are quite specific, but they're very interlinked.
Carol, any thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, clearly the EU is leading the world in data-driven governance, open data, effective use of digitalization in the public sector. I think these are really exciting opportunities across Europe. And I think with our Open Europe Foundation, we can cooperate and make a more meaningful contribution. And I very much hope our new foundation will enable us to contribute in the open source and open standards area in ways that are more direct than has previously been possible. But one of the points I'd like to raise is, I see one of the most exciting opportunities for the foundation is to help in building trust and transparency in IT solutions, helping support interoperability, and encouraging the development of what we might call ethical AI, using data for the common good. These are projects very close to my heart. I very much hope the foundation will be able to move forward in those areas.
And Carol, you jumped right ahead to my last question about what you're most excited about for the foundation. So awesome. Thank you for that. Laetitia, do you want to comment on kind of what you think is the most exciting thing or potential that we have, other than something you've made me have mentioned before?
Meaning building on all this experience of OASIS globally in building standard and driving, contributing and driving some of those agenda items is super excited. I do agree very much with Carol. Interoperability is the key to the next generation, in terms of I think if we actually do this well, that means that we won't spend all that time discussing how to interact with each other, how to build system, how to exchange data, and we will have more time and more focus to actually, create new things that are having a meaningful impact to society, to organization, and broaden the agenda and innovate more ultimately. And I think that's what we need right now, in society. We're far too slow in terms of bringing innovation to life, changing people's life, and God knows there's so many things that needs to be addressed. Yeah. So that being there to kind of contribute to that is great. And I think we, all people need to kind of take action. It's super important if we really want to have that flexibility as a society going forward. Yeah.
Agreed.
So with that, we're actually almost at time. So I wanted to leave some time if we have any questions from our listeners. So Dee or Jane, do we have any questions from our listeners here in the audience?
I do not see any. How about you, Jane?
We don't have any at the moment, so I think what
Well, I have some more. So
okay,
Good. Well, carry on.
I wanted to leave some time for everybody that may be watching this and have some questions of their own, but I do have some more, thankfully.
Awesome.
So, we've talked a lot about what the foundation could do. For anybody out there that's listening that wants to get involved, how would either of you suggest getting involved? So, Carol, I'll ask you to go first. How should people get involved?
Well, I think in the first instance, contact us. And we have our new, still under development website. Let's not pretend it's a very sophisticated operation as yet. We're just beginning. But we have set up our website at oasis-open.eu. And we'd be delighted if people contact us. And the email address would be info@oasis-open.eu. So that would be the most direct way of contacting us. The desk at which that mail would reach is my colleague Pim van der Eyck of the Netherlands, and he would be responsible in the first instance for following up. I think he'd also pass information on to me and to you, Guy, and we would do our best to respond. And I think I would like to emphasize we are actively looking for partners, for opportunities, for meaningful liaison, for real cooperation in different areas, and not only inside the 27 EU member states. I'm based in Geneva in Switzerland, and Switzerland has a very long tradition of participating in European standardization. And there's a lot of diverse interests here in Switzerland. But of course, the United Kingdom post-Brexit similarly has an interest in much of what we would do. So we are not saying only the EU, primarily maybe, but not only. And we'd be delighted if people would contact us.
Yeah, excellent. I agree. Laetitia, anything to add to that?
Yeah, meaning I am personally reachable on LinkedIn if you want. I'm very active, on social media. I'm always up for a good conversation, so you can reach out. I think obviously, as practitioners, we all are, are driving things within your organization or on behalf of some organization. People see all the challenges coming through. That are difficult to solve for, so don't hesitate to kind of raise up those challenges. I think a number of people may be hesitant to kind of raise some of those challenges, but I think everybody has it when you start. It's just being brave and putting those on the table is super important. So we can actually try to collectively solve for those. I think that's super important, because I think a lot of organizations tend to want to solve within their remit, but I think there we really need to kind of collectively work together and solve some of those, so we are more open collectively into the future and more flexible. I think that's super important. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. Always up for a good challenge and a conversation, and yeah.
I'm also on LinkedIn. Sorry, I should have mentioned. So
We're
I
all
am
on
absolutely
LinkedIn.
accessible on LinkedIn. Yes.
Yeah. We're all on LinkedIn. So I see that we have some questions, which is fantastic. So this one we have a couple of, I wanted to take this one first. Major EU governments like France and Germany obviously are very strong on open standards and open data. Do we think, are they or will they be strong open source adopters? I'll give my opinion on this, but I would love both of your opinions on this as well. I spoke at the OFE forum event last Friday, where we talked about this very thing. And I think that foundations like ours have an opportunity to, in some ways, demystify open source, because I think still sometimes in public sector and highly regulated procurement pipelines, it's really challenging when they've always sort of been biased towards standards for the very strong governance that standards provides, and not so much on the open source side. So I think we have an opportunity with this foundation and at OASIS Global in general to help both the open source projects understand what good, strong, transparent, open governance looks like, but also help the public policy folks understand how to bring open source in alongside standards. So I think for me, that's one of the reasons I'm most excited about this kind of work.
Sure. I mean, I think that we would be delighted to develop dialogues with people who are keen to consider bringing their open source communities into this area, and also public sector interests. I mentioned already the open source program offices, which we'd very much like to be in more intense contact with. And I think, one of the special aspects of what we've set up is that we are very accessible and receptive. We are looking forward to building a whole new network of contacts in the open source area. I think it's worth saying, Guy, just very briefly, that personally, I'm convinced that OASIS Open is way ahead of other standards organizations in having an established process agreed to take open source code into the formal open standards framework, all the way to ISO and ITU as appropriate, if that is on the agenda of any open source group. OASIS offers that route in a very accessible way.
Exactly. A couple of other questions that were related to sort of technical agenda and use cases and scenarios. We've sort of touched on them. I'd love for either of you to give your opinion on this, but I think I will stress again that we're at the very early stage, right? So technical agenda, again, I think some of the things that came up were AI, digital sovereignty, open data, but have we nailed down specific technical agendas yet? No. I mean, we've had one board meeting, so we're very early on. So there's definitely an opportunity, the person that asked that question, to influence what we potentially would work on. So Laetitia, do you have any thoughts on use cases or scenarios that you think that we would be working on within the foundation?
Yeah, I mean, we touched a couple of topics at the first board session. I think open data is probably one of the starting points of the thinking. We also discuss industry data more. There is a lot of value in sharing data within an industry, like the whole supply chain of the industry, if you want, from the people manufacturing things, to the people distributing them, to the people selling them, like to the consumer data as well, and all of that. So within industry, sharing data is super important, but we're also sharing data across industry to foster this innovation. So open data is a big topic, and the industry angle is also quite important, and will be key to creating the next generation, or reinventing, if you want, our world as we go on. We also touched upon quite a lot responsible business, responsible AI, and that's an area which is in need of further standardization, of further vision. So some of those use cases are going to be also quite key as we go into the next sessions.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I wish we had 2 hours to talk about all of this. Unfortunately, we don't. So I will say, Laetitia and Carol, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been fantastic to hear your vision. And I know that the work that both of you have done in helping get the OOEF off the ground has been tremendous. And I'm really excited, I know, to be part of this organization and what we're doing moving forward. So, and I'd love to invite you both back on the show at some point when we are a little further down the road, and we can talk about some of the great project successes we think we're going to have in the foundation. So thank you very much, both of you, for joining me today.
Thank you for having us. It's a great delight to be there. I'm looking forward to work hard to actually make some of those things happen. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
agreed.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone out there for joining us. And until next time, thanks for coming and listening.